Hello, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody in between and outside the lines. It's your good buddy Spider with another Monday episode of your favorite podcast. And tonight, we're going to go back through my history again as we talk about the personal computer, the PC. Let's talk about this. Now, when I talk about the personal computer, I call it a PC, but in my mind, a PC and a Mac are more or less the same. The terms grew separate after a while because people started identifying PC with Windows-based machines or something like that, and Mac with its own Apple stuff. But I still kind of, when I was growing up, it was all kind of the same thing. They were all personal computers, which is where PC comes from. And I've been through a lot of computers in my lifetime. And I've seen the insides and the outsides of a lot of computers, and it's been kind of an area of fascination for me. I used to really enjoy putting them together, building my own, ordering parts. And I've completely fallen out of that. I don't really do that so much anymore. I used to build my own gaming computers and stuff like that, and it just seems like the options and the time and the cost have gotten away from me. It's just cheaper for me to do. It's easier, honestly, for me just to do console gaming and call it a day. But we talked about consoles on a different show, so this is specifically going to be about my experience with personal computers. And you're going to have to bear with me because I'm going to have to get up every so often to check on my dog who is in the kitchen. And I'm sure she has to go to the bathroom and she just refuses to. Like, she doesn't go outside when she's supposed to because she's not quite all there in the head anymore, which is fine. You know, she's an alright dog. But that being the case, if I know she has to go, I stick her in the kitchen where it's easy to clean up, and I wait for her to do it, and then I clean it up for her. No big deal. And she's working up to one. I know it. I know she's working up to one, so I gotta keep getting up to make sure she doesn't absolutely make a huge mess out of herself. Because then she'll be really unhappy. So, the PC. I remember way back in the late 80s, early 90s, that my dad had a computer of some kind. I don't remember what exactly it was. I know that it had a monochrome monitor. If you don't know what that means, it's a computer monitor, which is the little TVs that they use, basically, where everything is only one color, and there's only different shades of that one color. And the most popular one has been what we had, which was green. Everything was green. The text was green. Any pictures were green. Any games you would play, everything was green. Different shades of green. Some of it was darker green for shadows. Some of it was lighter green. It was all green. And I used to play games on it, limited games. I would play games using the computer, which had the big floppy disks. Real big floppy disks. And they were actually floppies. Like, floppy disk became a term that went down all the way into hard disks, but they were still called floppies. But these were actually, like, light, thin plastic. Right? So you could flip them around and things. With the big hole in the center, and they were big square things. And, I'd pop those in and play games. Not much. There was this weird... I don't even remember what all the games were. There was this one where you flew from one side. I think it was supposed to be Star Wars, where you were supposed to fly into the Death Star, and you'd fly back and forth and shoot TIE fighters and things. And there was another one that I distinctly remember, where you were like a Christmas elf or something like that, and you were wandering around somebody's house. when they weren't around, and you were supposed to do something. I don't know if you were supposed to, like, put gifts out or what you were supposed to do. I don't remember. I just remember exploring from room to room. It showed you with the little curled hat, like a Christmas hat and things like that. So, but the graphics were a lot different. They were all blocks. People like to play games like Minecraft and things like that, which are all block-based games, and Roblox or whatever it's called. And Terraria and stuff like that. But back then, that's all it was. You didn't have anything else. Everything was blocks. Blocks and things. And from there, from that computer, I'm sure he might have had others before we moved, but that house was the house that burnt down in the early 90s. And when we moved into our temporary home, the trailer, while the new home was being built, he had... I don't remember what this one was, honestly. I don't remember what it was. It might have been an early Windows machine. It's hard to say. But I know you could play Wing Commander on it, which I did. I loved Wing Commander. I always used to play Wing Commander. You could play Wolfenstein. I played Wolfenstein 3D. You could play Doom on it and things, I think. I think you could play Doom. Maybe not. We played Doom on at least one after that. But I played all those games as a kid. I didn't do too much else on it. My dad had like tax programs like Quicken and different things that I don't know if anybody still remembers most of that stuff. Quicken Loans is now like a big company, corporation or something now that does like actual loans and stuff. And back then it was just financial software, real basic stuff. And but he did stuff like that on it. And he had flight simulators and whatnot. But I'd play games. That's all I ever really did with it. I don't know if there was much more you could do with it, to be honest. From there's a jump, because then I remember I got a Nintendo system, an early Nintendo system, the NES, around that time that I used to play. So I was playing those games as well. But then there was a jump, like I said, and the new house was built. And he had some kind of early Windows machine for sure. I don't remember what kind it was. By that point, it might have been Windows 95, which was a pretty rock-solid system, Windows 95, which led to Windows 98. Like, those two were pretty rock-solid at the time. And I'd play games on those, of course. And my sister, my older sister, had a computer that she was supposed to be able to like type things up for school and things, because she was getting to an age where she had to do papers and reports for school. And so she had a printer and she had different things. And her computer was an older one. It wasn't like the one that we had, that my dad used, but it was an older one. And it was an Amiga 500. I don't know if you guys remember that. Some of your old timers. You young kids are probably going to be like, I don't know, what are you talking about, Amiga? Huh? Amiga 500. I know sometime over the years we had a Commodore 64. I don't remember which one it is. I mean, the Amiga is made by Commodore. But we had a Commodore 64 also, and that might have been in the old house. I don't remember. Or maybe that's what I used to use in the trailer. I don't remember. I thought that was an early Windows-based machine, but maybe I'm wrong. Windows 3.1 or something. But she had the Amiga 500. And I used to play all kinds of games on that. And I used to play all sorts of games. I used to play the old original side-scrolling Duke Nukem games, 1 and 2, where instead of the adult stuff that is part of the series now that it's known for, back then you would run around collecting candy and colas and rescue your girlfriend from the evil Dr. Proton. And you would be you'd be battling pretty much all robots and things like that. And so that was fun. And most of the games were like that. We had that. We had an Indiana Jones game that I was never very good at. I think I got real far in it once. I felt like I did. But not every one of those games saved either. A lot of times they didn't. It was the same as like the early console stuff, where Nintendo, you didn't really have games that saved except for a few, because the memory for that kind of stuff was so small that they didn't devote it much to those kind of things. So you didn't save on Duke Nukem, you didn't save, and there was another one. There was a Conan game, and this is something that happened. Like, I remember this kind of stuff back in the trailer, all the way up into through my years in the new house. They had clever ways of making sure that you had bought the games that you were playing, because there was a lot of shareware and freeware at the time. What that means is a lot of people would give away parts of games so that people could play them, and then they'd entice you to like buy the whole thing afterwards. Like if you the Spear of Destiny was like that. That was the sequel to that was supposed to be a prequel, but it was for same as Wolfenstein 3D. You could play the first episode for free, but if you wanted to play anything else, you had to buy them. You had to go to the store and buy the discs, or send away for them and have them mailed to you, or something like that. So that was one way to get you in on it. But other games, like we had this game. It's not the only game that did this. There are other games. But we had a game based on Conan the Barbarian on my sister's computer. And because basically we had a collection. It was like a big collection of games all on one disc. And then we had a couple other things that were actually like the full games. Most of them were all like included on a disc. And in order to play the game, when you started it up, you had to have the game manual. If you didn't have the game manual, you wouldn't be able to play. Why? Because the game at the beginning, when it booted up, it would ask you, what's the mystical symbol on page 3, line 72, or something like that. And you'd have to go to that page and look through there and find a little pictogram, and then pick that from choices in the menu of the game. And then you'd have to do like 2 or 3 in a row. You'd have to do a sequence. And if you didn't get those right, the game would lock you out. And it was random every time. Like, you couldn't just like get it wrong and then do it over. If you messed it up, the game would close. And you'd have to start it up again, and then it would be randomized again. So you couldn't just like play Simon and hope you got it right. You had to had to do it. So if you lost the manual, or if you got the game from somebody, or if you stole the game, which we of course didn't, but if you were a game thief at the time, you couldn't, without the manual, you couldn't play. And there were a lot of games like that, and it was kind of crazy. Kind of annoying, honestly, because I wasn't always sure where the manuals went for some of these games as a kid. Sometimes they would just disappear, or I'd be like, oh, I like to read all the lore and things, because manuals back then were big. They were thick. They had chapters and chapters and chapters on stuff in the game. It was all like story for the game and things like that, because the games didn't always have story that was easily discernible in the game. They were more primitive. They were more, rudimentary. And so the manuals was where they put all that background information. And if you were at all interested in any of that, you wanted to keep the manual around. So I would sometimes run off with those in my room. And then my dad would get mad, and he'd have to go get them. And then he'd hide them. He would hide the manuals from me, so I couldn't play the games. Or, if he caught me playing the more grown-up games that I wasn't supposed to, he would hide the manuals. Because that happened sometimes. I would get into games I wasn't supposed to be playing that were too violent, or that were too bloody or something, or had bad language or something, because I was a kid. And, so yeah, I'd get in trouble, and he'd hide the manuals, and then I wouldn't be able to play the game. Now, some of them I still have. believe it or not, some of those old manuals. I carried them over when I left the house because nobody played those games. There wasn't a computer that ran them anymore. One of those is the very first Elder Scrolls game, Elder Scrolls 1 Arena, which I can't play on console. It's not out for any consoles. It is part of the Elder Scrolls collection. I think that's what it's called. I don't remember what the actual title of it is. It came out several years ago while I was still working retail, so it's been at least like 10 years probably. And man, it's been that long since I've done that, and that store is long gone. Memories, you know. But it was re-released with all the other Elder Scrolls games as a big package. I think upwards to Skyrim, maybe not Skyrim included, but like the first 3 for PC, but not for Xbox or for PlayStation or for any of those. But yeah, I used to play the original Arena on that. And eventually, one of my dad's secondhand computers, he would move down to the main area of the house, so I didn't have to go and run on my sister's computer all the time, because the rest of us were starting to get into school stuff. And we all needed to be able to print out, because we were all relatively close in age, so as we got older, we would need access to printers and things like that, and to do school reports and word processing and stuff like that. So we had a Windows 98 computer. But then the next computer after that we had, that I remember that I used for a long time, which was... it had its issues. It was Windows NT. It was like a networking... it was supposed to be for networking, because we had the internet then. We had dial-up internet. We had our dial-up internet, and anytime a phone call came through, we'd have to get kicked off the internet. It took like 3 days to download a music track, which we weren't supposed to do at the time, because they didn't have places to purchase music online yet. It was all mostly just pirates. But yeah, it took forever. But the internet was the big thing, and we had Windows NT, and Windows NT was terrible. It's one of the worst operating systems I've ever used on a computer to this day. I hated it. Eventually, he let us upgrade to Windows 2000, which, you know, by that time I was getting just about almost out of school. I graduated in 2001, which people are like, oh, that's not that long ago. It's 22 years ago. It's still a long time to me. But yeah, Windows 2000, which was a lot more stable. I loved Windows 2000. I think it was my favorite operating system for the longest time. I really, really enjoyed it. I did a lot. And when he upgraded after that on his personal computer that he kept upstairs to Windows XP, I was like, I don't want to do that. I like Windows 2000 better. It's working really well, because I was starting to be able to do computer maintenance at the time. I was taking networking classes in school. I was learning how to do settings and tweak things and do defrags and all those other cool things. So I was doing all that stuff, and I preferred Windows 2000. I had preference. But that's when, of course, we had the internet, so I was looking up information. I was doing Yahoo chats and AOL Instant Messenger chats with people from school, and I started doing music. I started crafting music, because I'd had, during my gaming experiences with my consoles, I'd had the first PlayStation system, the PlayStation 1, and I only had a few games for it, but one of the things I had wasn't really a game. It was more of a program. It was the MTV Music Generator, the very first version of that. And while I'm not big on branded things like that, I wasn't big on MTV. It was a neat concept. It was basically a full-featured digital audio workstation with a heckload of samples. And you could make so much stuff in it. And I did. I made all kinds of songs. The problem was, I couldn't take those off of the PlayStation. They had to be on the memory cards. I didn't have a way to take those off and put those anywhere else. And I wanted to, like, send people my songs, and, like, I was like, oh, this internet thing, I can start getting famous and things like that. I can put my music on the internet. You know, I had big dreams. Big dreams. Little did I know that all of that would fail many years later. But that's another story. So I couldn't do anything with it. And then one day, we were walking through a Kmart store, which I don't think... there's maybe like one Kmart left in the world, I think. Or at least in the United States. I don't know. But we were walking through our local Kmart store at the time. Because that was before the big collapse of the whole company and everything. And they had a little section of, like, bargain software, which was mostly, like, word games or, like, chess or, like, bargain financial software and word processors and things that people were like, oh, there's better stuff out there, but, you know, for $10-12, I'll pick this up. Or, like, an old game that was barely compatible. And sitting in the bin for relatively cheap, I think it was $12, honestly, was a copy of MTV Music Generator for PC, for Windows. And I was like, this changes everything. Because it had the option to export your tracks as MP3s. And that was a huge difference. Oh my goodness, it was a big difference. So I spent some time, like, painstakingly recreating some things from the PlayStation to the PC, up and downstairs, like, for hours at a time. But then I started just making original stuff separate from that. And that led to all of my musical escapades forever after that. I recorded my first vocal songs on a little computer mic without a monitor into this program on this Windows 2000 machine. So I'm pretty proud of that. It was a pretty advanced part of my life at the time. I was pretty proud of myself. It took many, many years before that went anywhere. I don't think I ended up releasing anything until 2008, 2009, maybe. I could look it up, but nothing official anyway, not like a full album. Maybe 2011. It was a long time later before I managed to get everything in order, but that's where it started. When I moved from there to where I lived for a while, quite a while after leaving my folks' house, I took that computer with me, and I would upgrade it myself. I would get a new video card, I would get new hard drives, I would get memory and things like that. And I pushed it as far as I could push it until it finally gave up. It's actually in my attic right now. Because I save all my computer parts, even though they're really unnecessary and they're all obsolete, and what am I going to do with them? But I saved it. It's up there somewhere. I got, I believe, an E-Machine, which was a division of, like, Dell or something like that. I don't remember for sure. It was a mid-range kind of thing. It wasn't the most advanced, and it wasn't, like, just a basic intro thing, but it wasn't, like, anything to be flashy about. It was inexpensive. I got one. Did some upgrades on it. Used that for quite a while. Replaced that with a second E-Machine that I used for even longer. And I had that. Oh my goodness, how long did I have that? That one, I think, I still had before I moved out to this part of Ohio. And I still had it for the first few years of my daughter's growth. I had it till she was maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4? Give or take, maybe even older. I don't remember, 3 or 4 at least. before it finally just gave out. I'd replaced the power supply, I'd replaced all this stuff on it, and then eventually just wouldn't do anything anymore. And at that point, I had switched, I think. I had switched to a laptop, not entirely. Like, it ended up being like the house media computer, but my laptop, I switched to a laptop for business stuff and for music stuff. And so when that went, I just moved the laptop to be the most primary thing. And that's the laptop I have now. The laptop is the centerpiece of my media empire, I suppose, here. I do music and stuff off of that. I don't really make it so much anymore. I just play it and occasionally stream movies off of it, and I do some browsing on the internet, and I do this. I do this podcast on the laptop, which is interesting because everything else I do is all on my tablet. And it's been a crazy, crazy trip to go from PCs to this laptop, where the portability, but it had its own set of problems. It wasn't easy to upgrade or to switch out parts if a part went bad. And then moving to, like, it's almost like for most things, most modern PCs are really hyper-focused on very specific things anymore. They're not does-everything machines anymore. They're not do-everything machines. Because we have our smartphones, which I talked about in the last episode. I talked about smartphones. I think that was my last episode. Maybe 2 episodes ago, but I think it was last episode was Rubik's Cubes and Retro Toys, so it was the episode before that. But now we have our smartphones, and they do most everything that we would normally do on average on a computer, like look up directions, or look up reviews, or do social media, or do any of that kind of stuff. So what do you use a computer for? Well, now, most of the time, if you have a computer, it's for gaming, and it's really high-end, really expensive, or it's for art of some kind, like dedicated for music production, or dedicated to visual art of some kind, or video, or something like that, movie making. It's not often that I see personal computers just, oh yeah, this is just the family computer, we just do stuff on it. You know, I don't see that too often because now people all have their phones and their tablets and things, and they don't need a computer to do all that kind of stuff. So you want to have the computer for a very specific purpose anymore, which is kind of a shame because I like doing everything on my computer. I like being able to play games on it. I like being able to type things on it. I like being able to look things up on it. I like to use it for things. And my laptop is slowly been failing for years. Like, it's got a lot of problems. I replaced the power supply. I replaced the internal hard drive, and I replaced something else in it, I think. Maybe some memory. But it's a little bit less functional every year, unfortunately. And I don't want to get rid of it. Like, I'm using it for this, and I have other things that I do potentially use it for, so I don't want to get rid of it, but it's slowly becoming less necessary as the years go on, which is a shame. I've always had computers in my house. As I've been an adult, I've always had a computer around of some kind. As a child, I remember always having a computer, even the early ones, even those early, green screen computers. We had them. And, I don't know. I don't know what I would do if my computers were gone. I think it'd be a weird situation, honestly. I know when my daughter's old enough, I'm going to get her a computer. Because she'll need it for school and stuff. Because you can't do everything on a tablet or a phone that you can on a computer. Still, to this day. The phones and the tablets can do most everything. But you still need a computer for some good stuff, like for word processing and for a lot of the other good stuff. So, another few years here, and she'll probably have one of her own. And I'm not sure what to buy anymore, honestly. I'll have to really do some research. I've been out of the game for so long. on that kind of stuff. But it'll be interesting. It'll be fun getting back into the computer thing. And but that's my history with computers. That is my history with computers. I've used a lot of them, and I still know a few tricks with them. I'm not as good as I used to be, but I still know a few things, and I still would like to have them around. If you would like to tell me about your experience with computers, or if you'd like to tell me how much you loved Macintosh and absolutely hate PC Windows machines, I'm gonna be like, and be grouchy about it. But I'll let you tell me. Go ahead. If that's what you like, that's fine. I don't like them. I've never liked Apple computing machines. Don't like them at all. Like, these days I tolerate the iPods and the iPad and things, but the computer systems, nah. Can't stand them. Don't like them at all. Would never get one. Absolutely not. No compromises. But if you like them, that's fine. You're allowed to like them. But if you want to tell me about your computer stories and your computer histories, this broadcast will be on YouTube shortly after it's finished, and you can drop me a comment there. Look it up. It's in the playlist. Let's talk about this season 2. I keep all my playlists nice and organized. Or you can drop me an email at uncannyspiritsclub@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you, and I would love to hear about your stories. I don't mind. Tell me all about them. So, getting towards the end here, this was episode 34, and we're gearing up. We're almost halfway through this. We're almost 3/4 of the way through the season, actually. It's not 3/4. Next week will be exactly 3/4 through, and then there's only 5 more episodes until I take my seasonal break for 30 days. For a month, give or take, depending on where the Mondays line up. So, looking forward to a little bit of a break. But I got some plans for the last episode of the season when we get there. And I also have some plans for next season. So, I hope you keep tuning in. I hope you keep enjoying what you're hearing. And I will keep doing it. As long as you like it, keep listening. So go ahead and play on your computers and have a nostalgic think about all the computers that have been in your life and what you have used them for. And I will see you next week.